So, this is the I Want to Be the Guy talk, or gal. There's a video game called I Want to Be the Guy. I don't want to exclude any female sysadmins, but to save time, I'm just going to say the guy. But in your head, you should translate this as guy or gal. And so my laptop battery doesn't run out. It is plugged in. Weird, screen went crazy. So anyways, short version is how to be a better system administrator. I'm going to be giving a whole bunch of random advice, tell you some stories, and see if you like it. If you don't, a couple other talks. You can always sneak out, I won't be mad. So, who am I? I'm Sean Sterling. I've worked at startups, I've worked at very large enterprise ISPs, and for the last 10 years, I've been the guy. So when everything's broke, they look to me, and there's a nice crowd around my desk, and that sort of stuff. So here we go. I Want to Be the Guy is a video game. This is an actual screenshot of that video game. It is extremely difficult, sadistic even. It's basically trolling for games. But when you see somebody who's really good at it, it's like watching art. And so too is it with system administration. With some time and practice and some documentation, what was impossible becomes only difficult. And you can graduate from difficult to not so bad, and then turn not so bad into easy. So one of the first things I'd like for you guys all to take back is the ability to say, I don't know. I've worked with a lot of sysadmins who just can't say, I don't know. You could make up any acronym you wanted, and you could say, hey Steve, have you heard of PRQ7? And he'd be like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. I read about it on Reddit, and I don't remember the details, but yeah, I read about that. But you just made it up, and they're totally lying. So nobody wants you to know everything. Nobody's going to expect you to know everything. Our industry changes too much for you to possibly know everything. But when management asks you a question, they don't just want you to Google it, because they can Google it. So when you are asked a question, you go out and Google it and look into it, and find out what language it's written into it. Maybe you check out OLO to see how popular it is and that kind of stuff. They're really asking you to give it the gears. They want your technical opinion on, is this thing good or is it bad? Do you bless it or do you condemn it? Can we use this, or should we, run screaming for the hills? And whenever I get asked, or whenever I'm forced to say, well, I don't know, I always follow it up with, if you give me some time, I will find out all about it. And quite often times your manager may say, don't bother, it's not important. They just want to see if you already heard about it or whatever. So don't lie about it, because maybe they're giving you the PRQ7 test. Like, you don't know. So another thing I'd like to talk about is when you should ask for help. It's a really fine line, and a lot of people have different opinions, but I'm going to tell you what I like as a senior sysadmin. Sometimes it is good to spend a lot of time on the problem. Like if you're a junior or intermediate sysadmin, sometimes it's great that you spend 2 hours trying to figure out a problem. Sometimes it's not great, and you should have just asked me and I would have told you in 2 minutes what you should look at. A general rule of thumb, what we have, is that you never ask a question that you can wrap in quotes and basically hit Google's I feel lucky button and get the answer to. In our organization, if you ask a question that I can wrap in quotes and hit I feel lucky and get the answer to, you buy us lunch. So when somebody asks a bad question, we're like, what did you say? Really? What exact wording was that? After a new guy buys lunch a couple times, they stop asking bad questions. All bets are off, though, during an outage window. If there is an outage and customers are down, get your senior and freak out, and, well, don't freak out, but get help. Don't worry about the outage window. Also, I see you taking notes. I'm going to put slides and video on the internet within a couple days. Just so you know. You don't have to take notes. You can if you want, it's all good. An example of help. So, it's story time. Many years ago, when I was an intermediate network administrator for a very large ISP, I was tasked with, come on slide. Oh, we're skipping. I was tasked with putting in a line card into this GSR 12460. And this was a long time ago when this router was brand spanking new. Now, a 12416 is still an awesome router. Just the chassis with no line cards in it itself is worth a couple $1 million, or at least it was worth a couple $1 million at that time. Takes up a whole rack by itself. That's 42 rack units. But as you can see, it's naked and needs to be put into a rack anyway. And I never understood why, but by the end of this story, you will figure it out. The little slots that you see are called line cards, and you can think of those like blades in a blade server because that's exactly what they are. The line card that I'm installing is a double wide, meaning it takes up 2 slots in the router. This is a 4-port OC48, which an OC48 is 2.5 gigabits per second per port, packet over sonnet. And it's the first card of its kind in Canada where I work. And so it's a big deal. And the card itself was worth a couple $1 million as well, putting into the couple $1 million router, so I was kind of scared about it. And this was the first time I was doing that kind of outage by myself. There was a senior in the building doing another outage, so I could get his help if I needed it, but I was on my own to get this done. And this was a production router carrying traffic for about 500,000 capable users. So I had installed many line cards and many routers, including even on this chassis, but I had never installed a double wide, and this was a particularly fat double wide. So as I put the line card in, as it got towards the back, it was making like a crunching plastic sound, like. Yeah. So I was like, oh God, no, okay, no, take it out. All right, well, okay, it looks good, and I'm going to put it back in. And same thing, as soon as I got towards the end, it went, oh Jesus, oh, I'm going to wreck it. So I spent half an hour doing that, and that doesn't sound like a long time, I know, but when it's half an hour of you going like this, that is an eternity of time. So eventually I gave up, and I went and got the senior, and I said, look, I can't get this line card in. I don't know what the problem is. I can't do it. So can you come and help? And he took one look and he smiled and said, I know just what to do. So he slammed the card in with such force it physically scared me. He literally just slammed it in. And I was shocked, like, ah! And if this thing wasn't in a rack that was bolted to the floor, he would have pushed it over. That's the amount of force it had. And we were in a giant server room, and it would have knocked everything over like dominoes. And then he looked back at me with a huge grin and said, is it working? And it was! There were no problems whatsoever. And I said, what the hell was that? And he said, we have a 4-hour turnaround with Cisco. We have a backup router in place. We can fail traffic around this entire data center. We're in an outage window. It's 2 in the morning. What are you worried about? He was right.
Question.
Sure.
What was making the crunching sound?
No idea.
It didn't do it after you got it in, right?
Once it was in and working, I didn't care. So I'm now the senior sysadmin for an electronic medical record company, and my job entails more typical Linux administration stuff. I miss the big expensive toys, but I still have fun. So when I joined the company, which was a couple years ago, there was no configuration management. Not only was there no configuration management, but there was no management buy-in on the value of configuration management. They thought this was a total waste of time. And worse yet, when we set up our application servers at this company, it took a whole day. It took 8 hours or more to set up an application server. And that's not because we were being lazy, it just was that convoluted and evil of a process to get done. So, sometimes you gotta go rogue. I set up a basic Puppet server at home on my own time on the weekend. Got that working, and while I chose Puppet at the time, I don't care if you use Chef or bconfig or CF engine, whatever makes you happy, right? Like, if you're a Python guy, you should probably use bconfig. If you're a Ruby guy, you should probably use Chef. As long as you're using some sort of configuration management, that's awesome. If you're not using it yet, I'm going to spend a little time trying to convince you, but I won't go too carried away. So I installed Puppet on a VM on my own workstation, and I just didn't tell anybody. I didn't set anything up, but the next time I had to set up an application server, I did all the work in Puppet, and it did take a little bit longer. Instead of taking the 8 hours, it took, 10 hours, maybe 11 hours. But I got it done, and nobody noticed. No big deal. But the next time I had to set up an application server, it took 10 minutes, and it was done. Now I had the rest of the day to do whatever I wanted. So it's time to automate everything we could. So if you're not using configuration management in 2013, you're doing it wrong. You gotta get on it. So if you're not convinced, there's all kinds of horrible reasons that people will come up to you that will just kill your time. And doing the setup and installation of the OS and the packages, this is the boring part of sysadmin. You don't want to do this, you want to do the cool stuff. And configuration management will let you get to the cool stuff. Even if you're the lone IT guy, configuration management is still for you. Especially if you're the lone IT guy, it's still for you. So what do I mean? You're not always going to be the lone IT guy. Eventually, they're going to hire somebody to help your sorry ass out. Or maybe you'll find a new job opportunity. And when you do find a new job opportunity, they'll probably already be using configuration management. And I find that they don't care if you're a Puppet guy and they're using Chef or vice versa or CF Engine. As long as you're using it and you're familiar with the concepts of it, they're pretty happy to have you. So configuration management as a bonus is going to make your systems consistent. No more of, well, I installed the first application server and it was CentOS 5.2 was out at the time, and then we never touched it because we didn't want to mess with it. And then the second application server, well, it's CentOS 5.3 and the other one's 5.5, and they're all this hodgepodge of different OSs doing different things. So when you have a problem, is it an OS problem? Is it a library problem? Is it a problem with our app? Like, what the hell is going on? Configuration management is going to help you solve that problem because you're going to know. And if you install any of the dashboard stuff, you've got a lovely little display of all of your systems, what version of everything they're running, just sitting there waiting for you to look at. Awesome. Without configuration management and you have multiple system administrations, team system administration gets out of control, too many people, too many chefs, and it just ruins everything. So if you're doing configuration management, it's pretty much a no-brainer that you're going to also use source control. If you're going to use source control, you should pretty much be using Git. Bonus points if you're using Mercurial, that's awesome too, but if you're still thinking Subversion is awesome, it's not quite there. Like, don't get me wrong, those are badass roller skates. They are. But I'll take the car every time. I held out with Subversion for a very long time, and I was just like, whatever, how good could Git be? Eventually, I converted one of my repos to Git and forced myself to learn it and use it for a couple weeks. At the end of the couple weeks, I converted everything to Git. It is so much better, it is astounding. But again, Mercurial, also awesome.
Sorry.
Sure.
I have found you another story there. I'm a Fedora guy.
Sure.
We did all our package management, our package specs in CDS for years. And Jesse Keating made it into Git. And Red Hat said, we want this in RHEL. They sort of forced him to do it in RHEL too, because it was so awesome. Everyone loved Git so much.
Git is awesome. It also gives you accounting, which is fantastic for your server environment. You get free tracking of who did what and when, and we mostly use this for when people are working from home. If you work from home and I look at your Git commits and there are none of them, you're not working from home. If there are 50, then I know you're working from home and I can see what you're doing, and it's awesome. It also allows you to back out of bad changes. You deploy a change last night and you're like, oh god, that didn't work at all. You can revert your configs with Git, or whatever, your source control, and then go back to a known working config. Awesome. You can't do that without configuration management. There's also the blame tool. Blame tools are also pretty awesome because what they'll do, if you've never used one, is, and you can use it in Subversion, and I think even CVS now, is it will show your source code line by line by line and the person who committed that change. So you can just line it up. And it's one of my favorite tools. Unless it was me. So, yeah. Sometimes the blame tool is not your favorite tool. When you're like, who did this? It was me. Oh. Come Puppet has a thing that are called environments, and I'm sure Ceph and CF Engine, Chef and CF Engine, bconfig all have the same sort of thing. I don't know what they're called because I use Puppet. An environment in Puppet is basically a branch in source control put on your server. So when I set up a new environment, it allows me to work in that environment without disturbing the other sysadmins. So even if we're working on the same box at the same time, I can do stuff in my environment, he can do stuff in his environment, and we're not going to step on each other's toes with our changes. Even though working on the same box at the same time is not really a great idea, but whatever. It's virtual machines, just spin up a new one, work on that. Setting up a new environment in Puppet is kind of a pain in the ass, so I made a tool to do this automatically. As soon as you open a new branch in Git, it will automatically make a new branch in Puppet. I will open source that tool. It'll be on my GitHub page in a couple days. So, let's put it all together. For team sysadmin workflow, basically we have one sysadmin who creates a branch in Git, modifies all the Puppet stuff that he wants to do, pushes the branch, tests it, maybe he'll fix it or whatever, and get that till a point where he's happy. Then he sends me a merge request, and in the merge request I can see his code, I can see his changes, and everything. I can comment on a particular line, be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Change your style, change your code, this sucks, you're abusing this, fix it and send it back to me. And it'll go back and forth, and basically we get a two-person sign-off, and then I can basically merge the change or send it back to him and tell him, fix it. To do this, we use Gitlab. Because I'm in the medical industry, we can't use GitHub because it's hosted on the cloud. We need to host it on our own servers. Not that GitHub is bad. GitHub is awesome, and I love it, and there are slides coming from it. The difference with Gitlab is you host the server yourself. It's easy to set up, and it's basically a GitHub clone. It's not quite as fully featured, but if all you're going to do is merge requests and simple source management, awesome. So, another completely random topic, and I'm going to do this a lot, is it is beneficial for a sysadmin to understand software development workflows, provided you're working for a software development company, which a lot of us are. And if you're not, you can fuzz out for a minute or two. The DevOps movement is starting to help in this regard, understanding what's going on with your dev team. Software development is pretty tricky. Agile is also very different, but like in the deployment process of Agile, there's going to be a lot of work coming your way. And if you have no idea what stage they're on in their software development, you have no idea when this work is coming your way and how it's going to affect your workload. So you should understand what's going on in the teams that you're working with. It's going to help in your career. All right, learn to type. I've met several sysadmins who are terrible typists, and 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that didn't matter because there was a lot of hands-on work. With cloud computing and configuration management, there's not a lot of hands-on work, and even if you are still working with big iron and high-performance computing, you've got a Pixie boot set up, and maybe you're running Foreman or Cobbler or something, and it automatically does all the hands-on work for you, or you're connecting to the chassis of the servers remotely. You really aren't touching the servers very much anymore, or you shouldn't be. So you gotta learn to type. And I think 70 words per second, yes. So I think 70 words per minute is a decent minimum, and you can get there pretty easily. You can use online games like TyperShark or TypeRacer and get there. Get a mechanical keyboard.
Yeah.
How many people in the room already have a mechanical keyboard? Woo. You guys are already awesome. Every one of you who doesn't have a mechanical keyboard, you should be questioning, why the hell am I talking about mechanical keyboards? They are a pure joy to type on. What I suggest is that you borrow somebody else's for a week, and this is what's going to happen. You're going to be like, it's no big deal, it's not that big of a difference. And by the second week, you'll be like, you cannot have this back. It is a joy in typing, and a lot of people think that mechanical keyboards have a bad reputation because they're loud and clickety. You can buy different types of key switches, so if you're buying like a Cherry MX Blue switch, that is loud and clacky. Like, you will be punished by the noise of your keyboard. But you don't have to buy the loud and clacky types. You can buy very quiet ones and still be quite happy. There are multiple internet forums of people geeking out over keyboards. I think it is as important as your chair. Get a good chair, get a good keyboard. You should also exercise your fingers. It's not going to matter earlier in your career, and you might think that I'm talking crazy to you right now, but it's going to catch up to you. After 15 years, maybe 20 years, your fingers are going to start to get sore, and you should buy a grip master. They're for guitar players or mountain climbers. They exercise your fingers. They're nice and cheap, and they'll build up the strength so that you don't have to wear finger braces like I sometimes have to do because I can't type anymore because my fingers hurt too much. But I've been typing for a very long time, and I type very, very fast. So if you only take one thing home from this presentation, do this, because future you will thank me. This is a picture of my current keyboard. It's a do-it-yourself project called ergodocs.org. You can use whatever kind of switches you want, but you have to solder it all yourself, put in all the chips yourself, download the firmware off of GitHub. When I plug in my keyboard to a computer, whether it's Windows or Linux, it'll identify itself as Sean Sterling's keyboard. This is very nerdy, but I love it. I also think that you should celebrate shortcuts. So if you learn to use Control-D instead of typing logout, just that one shortcut, that saves you 4 keystrokes. It doesn't sound like much, but if you log out 20 times a day for a 10-year career, that's 200,000 keystrokes that you save. You could type a novel in that amount of keystrokes. So imagine what would happen if you learned 20 shortcuts. It's just saving your fingers. So the programs that you use the most throughout the day, that's what you should probably learn the shortcuts on. If this means you're using Vim 80% of the day, you should learn Vim shortcuts, although you're not going to learn all of Vim shortcuts because there's a million of them. Shortcutfoo.com is a great site. You should check it out if you've never been. It basically gives you little flash pop-up quizzes on what's the shortcut to do this in Eclipse or Vim or whatever your favorite editor is, and you have to push it in a little time test and all sorts of fun stuff. It's awesome. But for most of us, the best shortcuts to learn are going to be your editor, your shell, and then your terminal. So for me, in my world, that's Vim, Bash, and Terminator. I haven't switched to ZSH yet because we can't deploy it everywhere yet, but as soon as we can, I'm there. All right, quick poll. How many sysadmins spend 50% or more of their day in their editor? Just one. Okay, well, fair enough.
Did you ask how many of us are sysadmins?
No, I didn't. How many people here are sysadmins? All right. So, over the last 20 years, I have found that the trend, in at least the companies that I've been working in, we're spending more and more time of our day in our text editor. Because of configuration management, pretty much everything we do is in an editor, and we're working out of whatever it is. Same with if you're working with the foreman or doing your Pixie Boot stuff, you're in an editor, you're modifying files and getting that stuff by yourself. So learning your editor really well is a pretty awesome idea. And I don't care what editor you use. There's awesome editors out there like Sublime and TextMate and I don't know, gedit, Vim and Emacs. They're great. Pick one, learn it really well. Don't use Nano, it'll corrupt your files. Just get away from that one, but anything else is awesome. But you're going to have to learn basic Vi as well. And you probably already are and just don't know it. Like when you are in a man page and you type / to search, you are using Vi's binding, right? And maybe you know or maybe you didn't know, if you hit N to go to the next search or capital N to go to the previous search, same as Vi. The Vi bindings are in a lot of standard Unix POSIX utilities and learning just the basics. I'm not talking about going full bore Vim and learning all of that because that's a lot to take on. But just very, very basic Vi. You can open a file, save it, quit it, that kind of stuff. And pretty much, it doesn't matter what box you're on, like if you're on some old VAX or Solaris box or whatever, Vi is installed and ready for you to play with. I've used full-blown Emacs for several years. I used Eclipse as my editor. Now I use Vim. I like to experiment. I encourage other people to experiment with your editors. I fought on both sides of the Holy War. I'm just happy if you're using not Nano. That's what I'm here to say. If you do decide that you want to learn Vim, go slow. Don't go finding somebody's Vim RC on the internet and being like, here's this 2,000 line Vim RC, it's going to make me awesome. It's just going to confuse the hell out of you, and you're going to have a bad time. Just add a few things to your Vim RC one at a time, and then move on. Try it for a week or two, and then add a little more. Vim is a long-term strategy, and totally worth it, but if you don't want to do it, that's cool too. All right. Who has played this game? You guys are awesome, but I'm going to have to explain it for everybody else. This is a video game called Gradius. You are this little spaceship. The spaceship starts off very weak, just like a pea shooter, and shoots the bad guys. You get all sorts of upgrades over time that makes your ship a badass. The upgrades are so amazing that it really changes the game, and you just kick the crap out of everybody. And it's really fun, but it makes the game almost too easy. Until your little brother walks in front of the TV and you die. And when you die, you lose all of your upgrades and you have to start over. And if you're far enough in the game, you would pretty much rather start over for the whole game than to try and get all those upgrades again, because it's a pain in the ass. Think of your productivity like that video game. It takes between 10 and 15 minutes for people to get into the flow, or some people call it the zone. And once you're in the zone, you're more productive. You're getting things done, and it's awesome. And it just takes 2 seconds for somebody to be like, hey, what's Bob's local? And it's gone. And it takes another 15 to 20 minutes to get back into the zone and get your productivity back up. So you want to stay in the zone or the flow as long as you can. And to do that, you want to disable things that are distracting. Like if you have a sound for your email, you should turn that off. That is not needed. If you have a flashing tray icon for your chat window or whatever, turn that off. You don't need it. It's not relevant. Although, if you are in a situation where you're a help desk responder and you need to respond to your emails within a certain amount of time, then okay, sure, you do need that. But you want to get yourself into a situation where you can tag out with somebody and be like, look, you're on email detail this morning and I'm going to work on projects and then we'll switch tomorrow, or I'll do afternoons, you do mornings, stuff like that. In my organization, we use IRC and Jabber for an instant messenger client. When we want to talk to each other, we use IRC pretty much exclusively, even if the person is right beside me. Doesn't matter. And when I leave somebody a message in IRC, it's for them to respond to whenever the hell they want. If it takes 5 minutes, no problem. If it takes 5 hours, no problem. As long as you eventually respond, that's great. But if I need his attention right now, I'll send him a message in Jabber, or I'll be like, hey Steve, look at IRC, because I'm waiting for you. This is great because it's logged. You can go back with it on it and see what the person said, which is great. And it doesn't interrupt their flow. So when they're working away and you ask a question, they'll look at it when they have time to look at it, but you're not going to interrupt them, and that's awesome. So yeah, if you're in groups, I already mentioned this, you just trade firefighting times. But if you're the lone IT guy, create a routine. So tell everybody in your organizations, look, I'll deal with all your day-to-day stuff in mornings only, or afternoons only, whatever. But for anything else, you know, the afternoons I'm busy, but mornings I'll deal with any of your problems, I'll respond to all the emails, but in the afternoon I'm going to shut off my email and I'm going to get some project work done. And clear it with your manager, because your manager will be all about it. They'll be like, you want to get more work done on your projects? That's fantastic. I want you to do that too, and this is a great way to do that. Tom Lemoncelli's book, Time Management for Sysadmins, should basically be a required reading for all sysadmins. You should grab that. He's got fantastic advice. This is essentially stolen out of that book, verbatim. Sorry, Tom. And programming. So if you've been a sysadmin long enough, eventually you're going to have to write a script. So when you write a script, well, you could do it in Bash, but I left it off the list. But you're going to do it in Perl, Python, or Ruby. So pick one of these languages and learn it well. You don't have to be a master, but learn it well enough that you can do complex things. There's a benefit to learning all three, but you got to start with one. It is also useful, like further in your career, that you learn enough of the other two to do basic troubleshooting, because you're going to encounter some weird Ruby stuff or some weird Python stuff or Perl stuff, and it's not going to work properly, and it's up to you to fix it. It's going to happen whether you like it or not. Long term, so like I'm not saying you need to go out and learn Python and then C. although that's awesome if you do, but longer term, as you get further and further in your career, closer and closer to being the guy, you're going to need to know a little bit of C. You don't need to know a heck of a lot of C, although it's awesome if you do. But learning enough C to be dangerous is pretty great when you're debugging something. Understanding Linux kernel is not just for programmers. There's a free version of it. You can download it and go through and really understand it. You can play with strace quite a bit and figure out what the hell's going on with your system calls and kernel calls, and then learn what's going on at an OS level so that you can troubleshoot whatever the hell's crashing that thing that's crashing. Looking for any kids in the audience? No. Okay. Just gonna wait a minute.
Oh, I love this cartoon.
So, when you ask questions or file bug reports on the internet, I advocate using your real name. Some companies don't want you to do this because they don't want Steve at company.com to be posting on the Varnish mailing list because they don't want to let you know that you're using Varnish and all that sort of stuff. I don't care. I actually prefer to register an email address that I can keep with me so that if I leave that company or whatever, I still have that and I can still use that, and I think that's great. An anonymous posting, you generally don't post a heck of a lot of information, whereas when you're using your real name, you don't want to look like an idiot, so you're more polite and you get more details, and you want to be as detailed as possible so that when on the Googleplex somebody searches your name, they'll be like, that guy files a good bug report, we could work with that guy, or that guy does the worst bug reports ever, I want nothing to do with him. So GitHub. You should get a GitHub account and then put stuff on it. I have a friend who's a recruiter in the San Francisco Bay Area, and if you don't have a GitHub account, they're basically not interested in you at all. This is an interesting trend, but it does allow people to see your coding, your style, your comments, your bug reports, how well you interact with others when they blame you or you blame them, that kind of stuff. And also a timer of how quick you respond or how slow you respond. It's great. I'm sure everyone in this room has written a bad script here and there. It was just this temporary thing that you were going to use this time for whatever, but it ended up in production and is now responsible for keeping half the internet up. It happens. So I think that you should write every program like you're going to post it on GitHub. It's difficult, but it also helps your replacement. So if you get hit by a bus, do you want your replacement to hate your guts because your code sucks? Or do you want him to think, wow, this is really easy to understand and easy to because your replacement might be your new boss in 5 years. It's a small world. You're going to run into people that you know. So the next time you write a script that you think is cool, ask your manager if you can post it on GitHub. Because chances are he'll be like, yeah, well, remove our name from it and don't put any passwords or anything in it, and other than that, I don't care. And it'll generally work out. A couple of years ago, I wanted to connect Nagios and Graphite, and that didn't exist. So I wrote a tool called Graphios, because I'm very creative, and threw it onto GitHub. And lo and behold, people started using it, and I started getting merge requests from people who are smarter than me. They made my code better, and they taught me things about Python that I didn't know. It's awesome. I get so excited when somebody gives me a merge request. I feel like a rock star, even though there's like 100 people that ever used it. Doesn't matter. It's great, and I'm learning how to do better Python because of strangers on the internet using something that I threw out that maybe would be useful. So it's awesome. Give it a try. Alright. So, I swear to God I have nothing to do with Safari books, but it's awesome. For 50 bucks a month, you can basically have access to this monstrous library of books. And not just books, videos of OSCon and all sorts of awesome things. I'm like a kid in a candy store with this. I go crazy. I don't read the whole book, but I probably open 50 books a month and like 10 videos. It's great. There's a lesser, cheaper deal, I think it's about 20 bucks a month, that allows you to look at 10 books a month, but they count a video as a book, so you can burn through 10 really fast. It's a great thing to try to get your company to pay for you to do. The way that I basically did that is I started ordering 2 $70 books a month, and they were like, yeah, sure, no problem. And then I was like, you know, we could spend half of that, and then I would never have to buy another book. And they're like, that's great, cost savings. So, public speaking. Public speaking is a necessary evil as a senior sysadmin, but I'm not talking about conference level speaking to larger groups like this. I'm just talking about speaking to your management board about what the hell happened to the servers last night and what was going on and what broke and all that sort of stuff. You're going to have to do that. It's not incredibly frequently, or if you're having all sorts of outages and problems, then maybe you will have to do that frequently, I don't know. When in doubt, use the whiteboard. Oh, you know it was cutting off on that projector, sorry guys. If you're uncomfortable public speaking, sign up for a local Toastmasters group. This is what they do. They teach you to get comfortable public speaking. It is pretty awesome, and you will be able to be comfortable talking in front of smaller groups. And maybe eventually you can graduate to doing a Linuxfest talk next year or the year after, something like that. Awesome. So, this is about embracing the outage. I used to work with a guy who would get sick to his stomach and vomit when we had outages. You didn't want to sit by him, but he would get very stressed out when things were down. Outages are going to happen. They're going to suck. But when you're the guy, you're in charge of fixing it. When I interview a sysadmin, I always ask them about the time that they saved the day, because everybody saved the day, at least once. You go out and you design the system. It's supposed to be fault tolerant, fault resistant, and redundant, but it all breaks because some developer did some crazy thing that was undocumented and told no one, and then it was this condition that was never supposed to happen, then it happens and everything blows up. This is going to happen to you, and I'm sorry. And then everyone's going to crowd around your desk. Even though you didn't break it, someone else did, but everyone's going to crowd around your desk waiting eagerly for you to fix it. And it can be nerve-wracking. And I can understand my colleague who used to throw up when that happened. You're going to get used to it. You can shoo people away and be like, look, everybody get lost and come back in 5 minutes. I need to concentrate, and I can't do that with all of you staring at me. So give it a try, but try to be polite about it. If you are in an organization that has outage windows, if you know what those are, outage windows are great to practice with. Like, even if you have nothing to do in that outage window, and be like, you know what, I'm going to shut down -H now on the main database and see what happens. Or if you can't have outage windows, like you're a website that's very busy 24/7, you can set up several virtual machines because you're already using configuration management because you're awesome. And then you pull the virtual power cord on a couple boxes and see what happens. It's just great doing stuff like that. Read a book on crisis management. I did this. It's really going to help you take a hold of your situation and be like, this is an internet server. Nobody's died. There's nobody bleeding. It's not a big deal. It really makes you aware of the lesser importance of this. I mean, okay, we're maybe doing less sales right now, but nobody's dead, so it's a good day still. And always do a post-mortem analysis. This is like going through all the logs and finding out what the hell happened. Try to get your management to sign off on a blameless post-mortem, because you're going to find with a blameless post-mortem, you will get to the root cause. Somebody might actually admit doing wrong when it's a blameless post-mortem. If it isn't, and you're getting stuck on people trying to, it was Steve who did it. Steve is going to cover up what he did, and you'll never find out. They'll delete the logs, and no one's going to know, and you're going to run into that problem again in the future. Blameless postmortems are the way to go. If you want to be the guy, don't get promoted to management. I'm not saying management is bad. I'm just saying if you want to be the guy, it's going to be really hard to be the guy and also be into management. You may have to turn down a promotion if somebody comes up to you and be like, you know what, you're doing awesome and we want to make you the manager of that group. And you might take that career path, and that's cool. But you're going to lose the technical side. And if you want to, you can turn it down. But if you do, be graceful about it. Be like, I'm not interested in that position at this time, maybe sometime in the future, but I want to be the guy. Yeah, I've met some very technical managers, don't get me wrong. It's just really hard to be in like 4 or 5 hours of meetings a day and still be with all of your technical know-how. All right, so this is awesome. You have to be good at explaining complicated things simply. And to get practice at this, there is a fantastic Reddit subreddit called Explain Like I'm 5. In the Explain Like I'm 5 subreddit, it takes, how does the atmosphere work, and explain it like I'm 5. And it takes something that is very complicated and explains it in very simple terms. You need to know how to do that, and you need to know how to do that without sounding like a condescending asshole, because your manager won't like that, or the management board won't appreciate that when you're sighing and explaining, how something simple works. They'll get mad at you, and it won't be cool. It's kind of a career-limiting move. Diagrams. You must learn how to diagram. Go to ratemynetworkdiagram.com, find a diagram you like, and then recreate that exact same diagram. You're doing this to get familiar with the editor, to figure out, how do you make those lines go like that? How did that work? There's lots of editors out there. You need to figure out how to use it and then make it work. Then put your infrastructure in the same sort of diagram. Yeah, you're ripping some guy off, but you're learning the program and you're figuring out how it works, and it's pretty cool. I still use Visio, which I feel shame about, but it's still the best diagramming tool out there. I feel a little bit better because Microsoft didn't actually make it. They bought it. YED is a very good editor, and I hope to switch to it sometime this year or next year because it is awesome. I'm just really good at Visio because I've been using it for like 15 years. And then repeat until you're good at diagramming. And a lot of times you'll have to do this at home because your company may not give you the spare time to goof off in a diagramming program for a couple hours, and it takes a couple hours. I'm sorry, but if you can convince your manager to allow you to spend the time to get good at diagramming, then that's awesome. But I'm telling you right now, it's going to be difficult. When I join a new company, I get a hold of all of their network diagrams that they have. Hopefully they have some. And I redraw them on my whiteboard. I redraw them on my whiteboard and then erase it and then draw it again and erase it and draw it again and erase it and draw it again until I can do it from memory so that I know their infrastructure. And then once I can draw their infrastructure with memory, and if it's too complicated, it'll be like, okay, let's start with data center 1. And if that's too complicated, okay, let's start with the routers in data center 1. You gotta take a piece of it at a time. Like if you start at Google, there's just no possible way that you're going to do this. Then, once I'm happy with it, I get my evil red pen out and cross things off and try to imagine what's going to happen when this thing blows up, and what's going to happen if this thing's disconnected, how's it going to work, how are these things going to interact, is there going to be some evil chain reaction that causes the whole internet to go down? I don't know. So, definitely get a whiteboard and fill it up, put stuff on it. I have a 4-foot by 8-foot whiteboard that I had to ask for special because it's awesome, and I have a backup whiteboard at my desk, and I have a portable whiteboard card, which I didn't bring with me today because I forgot it, which is embarrassing because I almost always have it on me. A nice portable whiteboard that I can unfold and use an emergency whiteboard whenever I need to emergency whiteboard. Whiteboards are awesome at diagnosing a problem, and if you can't draw the problem in the sysadmin world, if you can't draw the problem in a minute or two on a whiteboard, you don't understand that problem. You need to understand it better so that you can draw it on a whiteboard and be like, look, the problem is this device can't get to this device because of this, 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 and this. That's it in a nutshell. If you can't do that on the whiteboard, you don't get it, and you need to go back and learn it better. So, you need to have no loyalty. And I mean no vendor loyalty to software vendors or hardware vendors. Linux is not always the best choice for whatever it is, even though I like it to be the best choice for whatever it is. Sometimes Windows is the right choice. Use the right tool for the right job. and don't care if you're friends with the IBM rep or the Dell rep or the whoever rep. If someone's going to give you a better deal on the gear, then go with that guy. Sometimes the right tool has budget constraints. Several years ago, when gigabit Ethernet cards were new, Cisco released this gigabit Ethernet card that was supposed to be able to do gigabit Ethernet. And it could do gigabit Ethernet if every single packet was 64K, which never happens in real life. If it was normal internet traffic, it could do more like 200 megabit per second, which is bad because you bought this fancy gigabit Ethernet card and you wanted it to do gigabit Ethernet. But upon finding out that we were now courting Juniper, whose gigabit Ethernet card could do gigabit Ethernet no matter how big the packet size was, Cisco dropped the price so much that we still went with the Cisco. So yeah, make vendors fight for your business. It's always good. Some organizations like to only go to a vendor like at the beginning of the year and then let them continually rake them over the coals for the rest of the year and then start the whole process over. If you have a very large organization, that's probably a good idea. If you're medium to small, then I would go to vendor every single time and make them earn it. And the cheapest thing is rarely the best. Like, don't go with the cheapest thing, it's probably going to suck. Always be professional and polite. There's this horrible thing in system administration where we idolize the bastard operators from hell, and we really got to knock this off as a group. When you are, there's a book called The No Asshole Rule, and it's fantastic. And basically, when you're mean to somebody, it just spreads, and you've got to knock it off. So even when somebody has a terrible question that drives you crazy, be polite, be professional, always. You can also be assertive, which is fine, but always polite and professional. Because this year's underling that you're abusive to could be next year's manager who is now your boss. It's because you denied the promotion and they didn't, right? Be careful. Attend system administrator gatherings. There are several. This isn't really a system administrator gathering, although sometimes there's sysadmin sort of talks, but it's good. It's good that you're here. You guys are already in the awesome group. LISA, which is the Large Installation System Administration Conference, is likely the best bang for your buck because it's like 1,200 to 1,500 sysadmins all shoved into one hotel, and that is an experience that you should try at least once. The fun part of that is that every single bar in the hotel is just jam-packed full of sysadmins, and you just walk down and be like, what are you working on? What do you hate? What drives you crazy? What was that thing that didn't work that you tried to deploy that failed? I want to hear all about it. Not because you love Schadenfreude, it's because you want to know what you should avoid. If somebody had serious problems with OpenLDAP or FreeIPA or whatever, you want to know, well, what happened? What caused you to hate that program? I need to know so that I know what I should be avoiding. Like, we were right about to deploy Gluster and then heard some serious horror stories and we're like, maybe we shouldn't do that. Some stuff like that, I'll give you pause. And if you do go to LISA, I highly suggest you do one day of the technical training, because LISA is this weird thing where a couple days before they do technical training and then they do sessions, which are kind of like what we're doing now, is what I would call the LISA sessions. If you do one day of the technical training at LISA, they give you the training materials for all 6 days. They do this because they're lazy and they don't want to be like, oh, you were in training session A and B, I'll copy A and B's files to your USB key, here you go. They're just like, no, 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 I'll just copy everything, here's the USB key. So it's just kind of like a awesome bonus that you get all of those things. I say get organized and use Trello or something like Trello. If you've never used Trello, it's this awesome little program that works on your iPhone or your Android or whatever. You can use it as a task manager. It's just awesome for working with groups of people. It's so awesome, I use it with my wife to get our lives organized. We use it as a shopping list. We use it at my office for seeing who's working on what right now, what they're working on next. You can assign stuff to other people. It's made by Fog Creek, which is the Joel on Software guy. I have no idea how they make a dime on this because it's free and they swear it's always going to be free. No idea how they're going to monetize it, but For now, it's awesome, and you should give it a shot if you haven't, or use something like that. Because what you're going to find is somebody's going to ambush you in the hall, even though you've sent out like 30 emails saying, in order for me to help you out, you need to give me a ticket, or you need to do something, follow the process. No one's going to follow the process. They're going to assassinate you in the hallway and be like, hey, you need to work on this thing. And you're going to be like, great, I will do that. As soon as I get back to my desk, I'm going to remember it, and it's not going to be a problem. And as you walk back to your desk, you get assassinated again. Hey, you need to work on this other thing. And you're like, great, I'm going to forget all about that previous thing and go back to my desk, and then that thing is lost. Whereas if you've got a smartphone of some sort, and somebody asks you, hey, I need to do this thing. First you say, please, next time do a ticket, but of course I'll help you because I'm always polite and professional. I will pull out my phone and add that to my Trello, and then I won't forget it and put it back in my pocket, back to my desk, and then I've got something to track that issue and take care of it. You don't have to use Trello. If you've got something that is similar to that, great, that's awesome. Even if it's pad and paper, like in Tom Limoncelli's book, once again, he tells you how to do his system using pad and paper in it, and it's pretty awesome. If you need to do that, it's great. I highly recommend Trello, but again, you need a smartphone, but I'm pretty sure almost everybody here has one.
Just in case you have noticed, you're running a little short on time.
Oh, okay, thanks. Actually, I'm almost done, really close. There's like 5 slides to go. Eventually, you're going to need to learn how to make a business case, or at least understand a business case and what the business case is and what the business is looking for when they're dealing with you. Around 15 years ago, I asked management for a second monitor. This was before second monitors were common. I said, I need a second monitor, it's going to be great. And they didn't want to give me one. They said, that's crazy talk. Make a business case, we'll think about it. I didn't know what a business case was, but I took it as a challenge accepted. Okay. So I made a business case, and I said that the monitor was going to pay for itself inside of 3 months, and after that it was going to be a benefit to my productivity at 2% per month forever, and yada, 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 and I laid it all out, and they got me a second monitor. It did kind of cause an avalanche, and then everybody got a second monitor, and they weren't happy about that, but that's not my problem. That's their problem.
Should have mentioned that in the impacts.
I did miss that in the impact, but again, that wasn't my problem. This is going to help you understand what your manager's thinking about when they're doing their budget approval process, and start with something small. Maybe start with joining Safari, or attending Lisa, which is a bit of a challenge, but go for it. And the last thing I have to say is trust your team. Don't be afraid to delegate things. You can't do everything by yourself, even though it's tempting and it's hard sometimes to give a task to somebody who you don't think is going to do as good of a job as you're going to do. But you have to do it. You can't do everything. So trust your team. Allow them the possibility to fail, but allow them the possibility to succeed. And that's all I got. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Or if you want to go to the next thing, because I kind of went over time, and I'm sorry about that, no problem. But that's it.